Well, hello and welcome to the No Filter Needed podcast, where we cut the fluff, expel those myths, and kick unobtainable standards to the curb. I am your host, Camilla Collins, self-image consultant, author, and founder of multiple beauty and creative entertainment agencies. I am super passionate about empowering people to change their self-perception and reimagine not just the beauty, but the huge amount of power within themselves. And this podcast is in support of my mission to do just that. Hello, and welcome back to the hashtag No Filter Needed podcast. And I am joined today by the lovely Fiona Murden. Now, Fiona is an occupational psychologist and an award-winning author who has spent her career working with some of the world's most successful business leaders, entrepreneurs, surgeons, athletes, and just prominent people from across all different industries. And over the last 2 years, she has combined this with a focus on sharing behavioural science with a broader population. And she is on a mission to use her knowledge and expertise to make our lives just a bit better, easier, and healthier. And Fiona believes passionately that psychology can be an invaluable resource, part of an everyday toolkit which we have available to help understand our own as well as others' behaviour and positively influence it. So super excited to welcome her in. Fiona, welcome. Hello.
Thanks so much for having me. It's fabulous to be here. As you can see, there is no filter on this end.
Looking fabulous. Looking absolutely fabulous. So thank you so much for coming on and agreeing to do this. So you actually came onto my radar. This pandemic's ruined all concept of time for me. But the year before, not last Christmas, the Christmas before, because I picked up your book. I think I was looking through the Business Book Awards and I saw this book, Defining You, which is right here.
Oh, thank you.
And I took this to Bali with me. I went on a trip to Bali and I just devoured it. And I was like, this book is amazing. And it's almost like a course kind of in itself. And I just got so much from it anyway. So I started following you and have been ever since. And I just was like, I have to get you on. And I think the best place to start, I mean, how did you get into psychology? Where did it all sort of start for you in the work that you're doing and the book and everything?
So the books came a lot later, but when I was at school, I was always, we're all fascinated by behavior. I think we're all curious about why people do things and say things and, why did she say that? Or, oh, why did I say that? And so there's always that curiosity. For me, I struggled with my own mental health when I was a teenager, but I didn't know that until later because it was a time when things weren't as diagnosed. And I wanted to work myself out, and I wanted to work out why did I feel the way I did. And also I had this strong driver to try and help other people when other people were upset or stuck or muddled. And so I got interested in psychology because I thought, well, that way I can understand myself a bit better and I can also hopefully help other people. But when I went off to, I had a physics teacher who said, no, don't do psychology, do psychiatry, do medicine and psychiatry. So I got kind of taken off track a bit and started doing A-levels for medicine, and then thought, I really don't want to do medicine. My stepsister was a junior doctor and I looked at what she's doing and I thought, I'm not committed enough. I love the idea of medicine, but it's not the best fit for me. And then psychiatry is very different from psychology in that you're prescribing. And although you're still trying to understand behavior, it's more understanding the medical properties of behavior. And so I went off to uni to do psychology. And when I was doing the clinical psychology modules, I just thought, I can't cope. I couldn't do this. I couldn't listen to people day in, day out. I just won't manage. I'm not robust enough. And so I went off and did a business master's and then went to work as a management consultant because it was the sort of the vaguest thing you could do. It was like, that's what you do. But I just kept getting drawn back to people stuff. And I thought it didn't feel like a good fit anyway, the consultancy. And a few people had said that to me before, but then I went into stubborn mode and I was like, well, I can do it. And so I went back after 4 years, I went back to university to get my postgrad in MSc in occupational psychology with the aim of becoming a chartered psychologist. But I then worked with leaders for more years than I would like to say. And I always was thinking, these aren't, I mean, I love helping anyone, but these aren't the people I really want to help. So I thought, how can I get these tools and mechanisms out to a broader audience, which is where writing the book came in. And then a friend helpfully said to me, who works with underprivileged kids, well, she works at school with underprivileged kids, and she's like, Fiona, they're not going to read your book, and nor are the teachers, which is where or the parents, which is where my second book came from. But my first book was very much about trying to sort of share some of those tools, democratize the process, get that stuff out there to a broad audience.
It's really, really great. And just listening to actually your drive for what you do is almost kind of similar. Well, it is similar to mine. I think when we struggle with something ourselves and we have to kind of figure that out. It's only natural, particularly with mental health, to want to help others like through it. But it just raises your curiosity, doesn't it? And I think once you open that, once you go in there, you're like, whoa, there's like so much here. There's like, you could spend, you spend a lifetime kind of figuring it all out. And there's so many different ways to kind of look at things. And like, so who do you work with now? Like, who are your sort of clients mainly? Are you working with the people that you love to work with, or is it a mix of?
Well, I've had my own company for 13 years. And during that time, I've worked with people like the White Company, Dr. Martens, Cath Kidston, Selfridges, Lloyds of London, Rentokil Initial, Wincanton, all sorts of different organisations, and others that I can't mention. But I said Selfridges, didn't I? Working with the leaders in those organisations, sometimes one-on-one, Network Rails, another one, Southeastern, all sorts of different companies, Burberry. But sometimes it's working with one or two individuals there. Sometimes it's assessing people for a senior leadership role. And sometimes it's working more broadly on leadership and how that filters down through the organisation, or how that leadership team works most effectively together. So I still do that, but I focus predominantly now on development rather than assessment. So developing, coaching, working with leaders in that respect. I've created a digital course of Defining You, which I've just piloted. Yeah. So that
amazing.
It was fab. I piloted it with 22 people in 5 different countries. So I had US, UK, Australia, India, Holland, and just had amazing feedback. I was sort of thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to manage this with time zones? But we managed to work it out because it's live coaching every week. And so that was great. And then I'm also doing a lot of work on my second book, which is Mirror Thinking, which is about role modelling, and working with a charity called Future First, who match mentors with mentees in comprehensive schools across the UK. But I'm trying to get the pipeline further. So saying to corporates that I work with, do you want to mentor the mentors who mentor these kids? So basically the 18 to 24-year-old age group, will you mentor them? And then providing a lot of the tools for mirror thinking and defining you to the kids, to the young adults, to the teachers. And then there's also a leadership mirror thinking course, which I'm piloting with a company who really nicely approached me and asked me if I would do it. And I was like, well, yeah, I was thinking of doing that anyway. So if you want to pay me to do it, that's great.
I love that. It's so nice when things start slotting into place. And
yeah,
well, you're like, yeah, I was going to do that anyway, but I will take the money and your support and your accountability to get it done as well. Because sometimes we just need that nudge, don't we?
Absolutely.
A little bit of pressure to just get going with stuff.
Yeah.
That's amazing. It sounds amazing about the charity, and also quite similar to the Girls Network. I don't know if you know the Girls Network, who match mentor and mentees with.
Yes, I do.
Yeah, so that I've supported them with my book, so a percentage of profits goes to them, and similar thing. But I love how you're using obviously your clients to kind of come in at the top end and really have this nice progression, and everybody helping everybody else, because it feels really good, doesn't it, when we give back?
It does. And I also think it's about matching up natural systems, because
Mhm.
in a natural community, like thousands, not even thousands of years ago, hundreds of years ago, that would have happened in a community anyway. But now we're so sort of dispersed and we've got so many barriers in the way that it's not happening. So if we can recreate those systems in any way possible, I think it's really helpful. But the Girls Network, someone that I mentor is involved in the Girls Network, and she keeps saying to me, oh, I must introduce you to them. And I do want to learn more about them because they sound fantastic. And, you know, I think one of the things I'm keen to do is pull together lots of different organizations that are doing the same thing, because it's not about organizations competing. It's about how can we create more momentum and power behind this. And I think pulling people together is one way of doing that. So I'd love to hear more about them, but maybe we'd do that offline.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, definitely. Yeah, and that's right. It's just, you've got much bigger power when everybody pulls together rather than being divided and separated, and as you said, sort of competing. We can achieve much better things. So yeah, we'll totally have a chat about that. I will hook you up. There's honestly so many, like, psychology is just fascinating for me, and there is so many areas that I could ask you on, but I noticed there was one thing, well, there's actually two posts you put recently on Instagram, but you did say in a recent post that social media has been described to be more addictive than cigarettes and alcohol. And so I just wanted to use that to go into kind of your view on social media, and what it does to people, you know, how it affects people, how people are using it, perhaps maybe something that you've seen sort of developing, because you know, it's really ramped up a gear, lots of gears over the last few years, and I just wonder what your, you know, opinion of it is.
So I had a really personally negative opinion of it, but I wanted to know the science, which my husband always tells me off. He goes, you can actually go with what you feel rather than trying to look at science all the time. But anyway, I wanted to know science because people were asking for my advice on it, and advice for kids and teenagers. And so I looked more into what evidence do we have. And it's difficult because it's moving so fast to do comparative studies, which is normally how these sorts of things work, to find the really strong evidence. But what we are seeing is that where social media is used to properly communicate, I mean, it's not surprising. Some of these things you think, well, yeah, it kind of makes sense. Where social media is used to properly connect and communicate, it's actually positive. So for teenagers in lockdown, for example, if they're FaceTiming, or if they're sending proper messages to each other and communicating, or outside of lockdown, if it's used to arrange to meet up, that's great. If it's used in a small dose in other ways, that's fine too. But as soon as it goes over a certain limit, so over, I can't remember the limits they're saying, but it's like half an hour to an hour, there's two impacts. One, it takes you away from good things. So if you're on social media, you're not exercising, you're not outside with your head up, breathing in fresh air, you're not face-to-face connecting with someone, you're not learning. Well, you might be learning, but not in the way that, you know, we're learning by doing and observing and really experiencing the world. We're not sleeping. So there's all these things that it's taking away from. So that's one impact. Then the other impact is scrolling. And if you think about it, what you're seeing is lots of itty bitty pieces of information. We're not seeing a whole picture. And so we're not actually feeding the emotional systems of our brain, which need constant nurturing. It's like this constant learning you talked about with psychology, you're constantly learning, but actually as humans, we're constantly needing to learn about who we are, how we fit in the world around us, what that means. And we also need to constantly feed the empathic systems of our brain. They're like muscles, so they can wither. And actually the impact is it's reducing levels of empathy in younger populations. But that in itself then undermines mental health. But then, of course, there are another group of individuals who are more prone to find it negative because of mental health. And then you could go through a whole other thing where you have Kim Kardashian sort of representing false images of herself, or someone highlighting self-harm and making out that's a good thing. Those things can become contagious very quickly on social media, which also has a negative impact.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I have a bit of a love-hate relationship because, yes, it does. It's great for connection, particularly, in lockdown. And there is some good stuff on it. I just feel it's, it's kind of playing with fire a little bit, to really manage your time on it. And I'm really interested to know like the science kind of behind it. And it's really interesting you saying about the little bits of information that we're getting, and not kind of, well, and that's it, we're not getting the full picture. And also that's what we're looking at with other people's lives. We're kind of jumping to conclusions or filling in the gaps incorrectly most of the time, with, body image, fitness transformations, things like that. And I talk in my book about it being, marketers' playground as well, and sort of the subliminal messages kind of coming in. I just think it's really dangerous. But it's here to stay, isn't it? It's not going anywhere. So it's another thing to manage in our lives, another management.
And I don't think it's fair to put the onus on the user. And I hate that word user, because that in itself sounds like an addictive thing, doesn't it? The user. But I don't think it's fair to put the onus on us. I think there needs to be regulation. And I don't mean regulation like Big Brother regulation. I mean, let's look at the behavioural implications of this. Let's look at what's good for people. But the problem is the commercial giants have such a foothold in it that, are we going to get there? I don't know. I mean, so there's, you might have seen Tristan Harris. I can't remember how he says his name. He says Tristan Harris or something. But Tristan Harris, he set up the Centre for Humane Technology. And he did the Social Dilemma documentary, which unfortunately, with my science hat on, I was like, it's not all actually accurate, but it's an interesting counter to everything else that's going on, and it caught people's attention, which was positive. It was just a shame that he got some of the bits wrong.
What were the bits that were wrong?
Things around psychometrics, some of the stuff was cut in a strange way. There was also, which changed the messaging, there was also the impression that these people have created something knowingly. They haven't. It's, my husband's a digital, he's a partner at McKinsey in digital, and I know all the ins and outs of this stuff, and it kind of becomes a beast unto itself. No one sat there cleverly going, how can we create something that's going to do this? And then it's been taken advantage of because suddenly you're drawing all the data. But it's really hard. I mean, I'm chief science officer for a startup, and it's a tech platform which is for retail and hospitality. It's about getting learning and behavioural tools to people on shop floor. And I mean, they get really irritated with me because I'm banging on about the ethics all the time. But I'm like, you don't know how it can exponentially get out of your control very quickly. And so you have to put those guardrails in quite early on. But doing that when you're up against the commercials is really hard.
Yeah. Well, there's, it's caring about more importance on the bottom line, isn't it, really?
Mm-hmm.
And also all the people to go through as well. It's like a big machine to kind of move or change their ways, I would have thought. So yeah, it can be tricky. Do you feel that, people are kind of coming around a bit more to, not ignoring things and being a bit more mindful, I guess, like corporations and things in how they're messaging and their tactics, I guess, as well?
I think the hard thing with corporations is they're not as a body, they don't have that accountability or desire to understand and ethically connect with an individual. So it all sounds rather pompous, but it's not like, if you take one individual, it's a bit like, this is a bit extreme, but if you look at what Hitler did, so he created momentum behind something, which meant that no individual felt they were accountable for the horrible things they were doing. And I feel like with companies, because they sort of get this momentum up, no individual is sort of saying, it's my responsibility. I don't want people to feel like this. So it just keeps going. And so we do really need people to stand up against it to be able to change it. And it's not fair for people who are sitting at the other end of social media to be responsible for that, because it's our way of living at the moment. It's our way of connecting. And if you cut yourself off, you're cutting yourself off from your social network, because that is the way other people are using it.
So right. And I find that a really interesting thought as well about responsibility and people not taking, or it's like the blame thing, or just it's someone else's duty, it's someone else's responsibility, not pointing specifically, but I think taking responsibility for yourself is, and your actions and things like that, it's actually a really like empowering thing to do, because it means you kind of, you know, you have more control over your life, over kind of situations, because you can deal with them. Whereas if you're so used to not taking responsibility or thinking it's someone else's problem or duty, then it actually leaves you very powerless to certain circumstances or events when they do come along, which means you're not equipped mentally, you haven't kind of built that strength to deal with them. I don't know if you'd agree with that, or if I'm making sense.
No, I totally agree. And it's also, there's research suggests we're only actually in conscious control of 5% of our cognitive activity. So, you know, it's really important that we focus that 5% in the right direction, so that everything that happens underneath is going the right way, as it were. And I personally really believe in awareness and consciousness, but we can't be aware and conscious of everything. So it's understanding where to focus that attention and how to prioritize that. And that partly comes back to understanding ourselves. So what works for me? And what's sort of like, it's almost like creating a manual or a guidebook to you, because we all have different needs and wants and preferences and hotspots and irritations and all those things.
So I'm just like, yes to all of this. Like, yeah, I just, self-awareness, I just think it's absolute key. And you saying about a manual, I always say that things are easier to operate when you have a manual, you know, or flat pack furniture you're putting together, like you have a manual, and the more you can work on that and build your own manual, the easier it is to navigate your life. And you can navigate yourself better and everything kind of outside of you if you learn more. So yeah, I'm totally pro self-awareness. What are your kind of tips for people to increase their self-awareness or build their self-awareness? Are there any kind of go-to activities, as it were, or things that you suggest people do?
So there's one thing that I always point out, and I'm really lucky that I'm connected with Tasha Urich, who did the TED Talk on self-awareness. She's done loads of research on it. And we had a good old chat about this, but she puts it really nicely. So there's a difference between what, why, and how. So when we're looking at self-awareness, when we're looking at increasing our understanding of ourselves, if we go down the why, we can end up going in rabbit holes, and we'll ruminate, we'll question, we'll introspect. Why did I say that? Why did they do that to me? Why did that happen? Why am I feeling like this? Whereas if you say what was the reason behind that? What could I do differently? What does that tell me? It changes it quite dramatically and quite easily. So what I'm trying to say is there are two approaches to self-awareness. There's one that's a light touch, it's a curious, it's exploratory, and it's fantastic and it's so good for you. There's another that can take you down a really negative path, where you start getting yourself into holes, and the harder you look for things, the harder it will become to find the answer, because the way our brain works. So our brain hasn't evolved to be solved, but we think it has, because everything in the outside world can be solved. And so I think the approach to self-awareness is this light, curious, exploratory. And then it's looking at things, and I say sort of through the lens of a detective. You might remember, you kindly read my book. Yeah. It's saying, well, who's your favourite detective? I mean, I love Miss Marple. So what would Miss Marple do? Well, she observes situations and she thinks, oh, why do they get angry when I say that? Oh, so I've said why again, but what is it? It's really hard. What is it that What is it that's making them angry when I say that? What have I done? What have I said? Or what makes them happy? What is it that I do that makes them smile? How do they respond when I say X, Y, and Z? So it's starting to notice how people react to you, and then also noticing how you react to the outside world. So just observing, actually, I get really irritated when that happens. What does that tell me? Or I get really excited when I talk about that. What does that tell me? And then, so there's those things that you can do. You can ask simple questions of people. So you could say to people, what excites me? So you ask a really good friend, they'll tell you something that might really surprise you. When do I get animated? When do I look really pissed off? What gets under my skin? So ask them, but do it in a fun and a light way. So that's, I mean, there's lots of different ways. There's all sorts of different ways, like exploring your storyline, your personal narrative. It's fun. It's actually, they're never ending, but in a really positive and fun way, trying to understand and raise your self-awareness.
I think that's the key, is to have fun with it and not look at it as like, this kind of deep, dark place that you have to kind of go to figure out the meaning of life and your motives. And it's like, just be playful with yourself and curious. So the timeline is a great exercise in the book, sort of mapping that out, because as you say, the clues are there as to what you're what you've been passionate about for a long time, what really gets under your skin. These things don't leave us, and things get busy. I remember sitting there kind of working through it, and I was just like, wow, God, yeah, like not a lot's massively changed for me. These things still kind of annoy me, but they just look like something else now, but actually it's the same thing that was there all along. So I'm so glad you turned it into a digital course. That's amazing.
It was actually readers that's got me thinking about it. And then I've got the second editions coming out in May. And so it kind of made sense to do it around that. But it was other people asking me. And then with the pilot, it was really weird, because someone said to me the other day, how did you find people to do the pilot? And I was like, I just started saying I was doing it, and people started saying, can I be on it? And I had such a wide range of people. I had a friend who's a doctor and a neuroscientist from New York. I had a stay-at-home mum who lives locally. I had 2 directors of Network Rail, 2 directors from JP Morgan, my literary agent, the friend. It was just a really diverse group of people. But it was just, I was actually dreading the group coaching sessions, because I thought I just didn't think I was going to enjoy them. I won't go into why, but I just didn't think I was. And I absolutely loved it. I looked forward to it every week, and I was gutted when it was coming to an end. I was just like, I literally was teary in the last sessions, because I just didn't want it to end. So it was a great experience, and it's fantastic, because I think not everyone has got the drive to work through a book on their own. And putting it into a course, I partner people up as well. So I say to people, bring a friend or bring someone you work with. And then part of it is guided how you work with your partner. It just brings it to life more, and it makes more sense of it, I think, if you're not doing it on your own.
Absolutely. And I think not only have you kind of got the accountability like there, it's not so scary, I guess, doing it on your own. And normally, I guess with I've seen many therapists in my time, and I've seen lots of people. I'm quite aware with this stuff, so I can do it. But for someone to just pick up this book who probably really, really needs it, it will be a very overwhelming and maybe confusing and scary place to kind of do on their own. So I think even having someone with you, and I think it's really important anyway to kind of for perspective, and to sound out ideas and sound out our thoughts with other people as well. That's a massive part of it. I think actually if you don't have that, then you're missing kind of the whole point of it, particularly when you're saying about being a detective.
It just unlocks things. And I think, when we say things out loud, they make more sense. It's as simple as that. When they're in our heads, it's harder to make sense of them. I mean, there was one set of people who were on it, One of the ladies was 59. She'd just come through breast cancer, and she said she didn't really think that she needed to be self-aware. She didn't realise the sort of the passion and power it would give her by being more self-aware. And she now feels totally empowered and like she can change, and there's a road ahead. And I was like, wow, I mean, what more could you ask? That's what it's about. It's giving everyone the keys to themselves, as it were.
Yeah, empowerment. I think that just is the word. And again, it's kind of a word that's got flung around a lot, like a lot of things that go on trend on social media and get hashtagged the life out of. But yeah, it's just it's confidence it's self-confidence building, isn't it? And
absolutely.
And building. And so actually I was going to ask you, so self-confidence and self-esteem, what's the difference between the two?
So self-confidence, from a technical perspective, self-confidence is about achieving a goal, and self-esteem is about the internal dialogue we have.
Right.
So I might say, and you can be different, have different levels of self-confidence with different things. So I love snowboarding. So you put me at the top of any slope, and I would love to go down it. Put some rocks in there. Great, bit of a challenge. Love it. if you put me, I don't know, trying to think of something that I don't like so much. If you were to put me in an English class, so English was my worst subject, and you'd ask me to discuss the literary meaning of something, then I wouldn't have as much confidence, because with that goal in mind, I'm not as good. And self-confidence you can improve by literally throwing yourself into things. So you don't know if you can dive off the 10-meter board unless you try to dive off the 10-meter board. And then once you've done it, you have more belief that you can do it again. But self-esteem is this whole thing around self-compassion, self-care. It's the way we talk to ourselves. And I, for example, am pretty self-confident. So I will throw myself at things, but my self-esteem is awful. So I put myself in this really strange position where I'll put myself out there and I do things, but then if I get any sort of like feedback that it's not quite how I want it to be, I'm crushed, because I'm like, my self-esteem, my internal voice will start going whizzing away like 100 miles an hour. And it's something I need to work on, because it's not healthy. But it's also, you ask anyone and they'll have some negative voices in their head. There's no one who hasn't. But it's how much can you turn the volume down on that and turn the volume up on the more self-compassionate way of experiencing life.
It's like the mirror's talking back to me in terms of having that self-confidence, and then the self-esteem and taking things kind of really like sort of in your gut, and then once that negative self-chatter kicks off, then it you go places that you don't want to go. And again, awareness that it's there. I think there's some people that aren't even aware. They just think, oh, that's just the way it is, like that's how it is. And it's like, well, I think the more aware you can get of it, and the more you can section it out or get good at interrupting it, the more that you can intervene and not let it. I think it's like healthy habits and bad habits. The more times you vote for a good habit in your day, whatever it is, the more you kind of build that. If you're voting more on the bad habit side, then things start on the decline. And the same with the positive or the negative talk that's going on in our heads. If we can intervene and put it back on course in a kind of a good way, the stronger we get at doing that, or the better we get at doing that, then I think the better we get at building our esteem and keeping on the straight and narrow as much as possible, and being happy and calm and fulfilled, and not anxious and angry and stressed or sad. So awesome. And emotional wisdom. So this is literally the latest post that I saw on Instagram, because I thought I'd just hop over this morning before I saw you, and I was like, oh, this is great. So you did a TEDx talk in March.
So just over a week ago, London School of Economics. I was meant to do it in person last March, Then it was changed to being in person this March, and then it ended up being video recorded, which was painful for me because, as I said at the beginning, I hate video recording. So giving a talk to a camera wasn't my favourite way of doing it, because although I, like everyone, get nervous going on stage, once I'm on stage, I love interacting with the audience. And even with a TED Talk, you're delivering rather than interacting as much, but you still see the responses of people, and that gives you energy. It was very difficult for me doing it without that, because it felt like acting, which is about the furthest from anything I'm capable of doing in my life. But anyway, I did it, and they've said that the link will be available at some point. But that was a message from my TED Talk, yes. Amazing. And I talked about social media in there as well. And
you have to watch that when the link's out. But I'm just going to grab the quote because I pinned it to my desktop, where you said, "We all have great potential for empathy, which forms the foundation of emotional wisdom, allowing us to not only understand ourselves, but to infer what other people are thinking." And I just thought it was a really great quote, because again, it's about learning about ourselves and learning about other people and building that emotional wisdom so that we can add value to other people's lives, but also add value to our own lives at the same time. And it's the two working together, isn't it? The two go hand in hand. You can't really have one without the other.
Well, I give a shocking story in the TED Talk about a girl who grew up with dogs. And when she was found, she couldn't talk. She walked on all fours. She scavenged through rubbish for food. And it's an awful but a stark demonstration of how we actually need other people to develop the systems in our brain. They don't just come ready. And, we kind of think that we learn those things, but we don't think about where we learn them from or how we learn them. We just think, a baby doesn't have them. But by the age of 8, you can talk, you can interact, you can smile, you can laugh, you can see if someone's angry. But we forget how. And the how has been through thousands and thousands of interactions with other people. And actually our brain has to mirror what another brain is doing. And then that enables us to infer and to build up our understanding. But that's how empathy develops. And that's why empathy can be diminished, as it were, through things like social media, because we're taking time away from those interactions, those that are essential really for feeding who we are as humans.
Absolutely. And you got me thinking. That really stresses, doesn't it, how important it is to be aware of the people that you're spending time with, the most time with, if that's, if we are kind of mirroring, because that goes on, obviously a lot in sort of childhood and early on, but even now, we're constantly adapting because we want to fit in, don't we? We want to be part of the pack and feel connected. So if we're around people that aren't hugely supportive of us, or maybe the right people for us, that can be hugely damaging.
It can be. And it's incredible actually, because we kind of think of teenagers as being more susceptible to it. They are more hyper vigilant of their peers in terms of their social brain is developing quite dramatically at that time. But we are as influenced as adults as we are when we're teenagers, but we are less conscious of it. So actually it makes it more critical to become conscious of it, because otherwise we're being pushed and pulled in ways that we're not even aware of, like to your point, like what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think you're a lot busier and distracted. I think the world in general is now, or maybe that's just because I've grown up, but I think when you're older, you've got more more responsibilities, more kind of commitments and things going on, that actually the awareness kind of goes a bit, and you do fall into being in environments and things that probably aren't supporting you and think nothing of it, but actually it's doing damage subconsciously. You're not, if you keep on doing it and focusing on a million other things you've got to do, like the kids and the family and the work and the career and everything. So I think that's a really great point of taking more notice of it, and tuning in a bit more and not being so distracted.
And it's really important to have relationships that nurture who you are. And that doesn't mean cutting off people. We've got family members who might not be as positive, or things like that. But it doesn't mean cutting those people off, but it's being really aware before you see those people and making a decision not to let it impact you. And one little tip, I mean, actually in the second edition, I close with visualization, because I've always sort of used visualization with clients. So when leaders are doing big talks and things, but I haven't used it systematically or really got onto the surface of it. And I did a podcast with, I do a podcast with a friend of mine who's a sports psychologist, and we got into visualization, and I was like, wow, you know, this could be, it's so powerful if you deliberately create a visualization script in the way that athletes do. And it's a really powerful way, because you say, oh, well, you know, I'll decide before I see I know it's all alien to us at the moment because we're not seeing other people, but I decide before I see Auntie Joan, I know she's going to attack me. I'm not going to let it impact me. And then you see Auntie Joan, and it does make you feel like you're really little and belittled, and it does impact you. But with visualization, it takes us into a calm state, like hypnosis. If we practice seeing Auntie Joan beforehand and it not impacting us, then it allows our subconscious to take that route when we're in that situation, rather than taking the routes always taken, which is Auntie Joan makes me feel belittled or horrible or whatever. So visualization is a really helpful tool in that, when you've got those situations. So firstly, choose the people you surround yourself with. And secondly, where you can't, use visualization ahead of time to protect yourself.
I think that's such a great point. And we did a live session on Instagram yesterday. I mean, I didn't go into too much detail, but I've actually been doing this with myself. The thought of, because it's like lockdowns, you know, lifting, and just waiting for that moment. I know what's going to happen is it's going to be like, yeah, you know, sort of out, and then everything kind of falls to chaos as well, because you haven't thought further ahead than that moment. So I think, you know, visualizing and preparing yourself for all eventualities, you know, just allows you to plan a little bit better. So you're not out constantly, you know, eating and drinking and socializing with friends that ruins your diet, you know, hangovers creeping because it's all celebration, lockdowns lifted, you know, things like that. You know, it's just remembering to think further ahead in order to plan and visualize how you're going to handle the situation of, like, you know, no, I can't do this, and, you know, what you're willing to compromise as well. So remembering to forward think, because I think we can get trapped in the moment. Well, I certainly can.
It's really interesting. And this is where I have, you know, with the mindfulness thing, I think mindfulness is brilliant. It's such a powerful tool if you learn to do it properly. So it's like, I just recorded a podcast with Russ Harris, who's brilliant. He wrote a book called The Happiness Trap, which is,
yes,
I mean, yeah. So
on that shelf up there.
He's wonderful. He's such a nice man. But he said, you know, his son came home from school and he'd been doing colouring, and it was called mindfulness. And he's like, that's not mindfulness, that's relaxation. So there's one aspect that's actually understanding what mindfulness is really important if it's going to have an impact, positive impact. But the other thing that I think we're lost in is we're so concerned with mindfulness that we're forgetting or not aware of the fact that reflection and projection are also really important to our mental health. So doing it in the right way, so it's not worrying about what's to come, and it's not worrying about and sort of ruminating over what's happened, but constructively reflecting, and actually constructively daydreaming, as it's called in technical terms. I love that word, though, daydreaming, is really important. It's really, really important. And like you say, it's planning your time, because if you don't plan your time, your life is taken on a route that you don't want it to go on.
Well, other people, you know, if you don't plan your day, other people will run your day for you, or other things. And the same for the week, the month, and the year, I think.
Absolutely.
But it's harder because we're told, like, be in the moment, be present, it's like, yes, all very well, and do that, but also, as you said, you need to reflect back, just to, you know, every now and again, to kind of realize, you know, recognize how kind of far you've come with things, and also see the lessons and the learning, but then also not live too far in the future. So you're living in the future, which hasn't kind of happened yet, but, you know, projecting a little bit in order to plan, so you know where you're going, like, you're staying in the right direction.
Absolutely. And this is the thing that I get really passionate about as well, is that with psychology, we really need to understand the whole thing, because when we're given bits of information, it can send us off down the wrong track. So if we're told be in the moment and be mindful, and we're not told how to be mindful, and we're not actually, told, well, actually you should be reflecting, because we learn more from reflecting once we've got a skill than we do from doing. And visualization and daydreaming, and how does it all fit together, and what does this mean in my life, and what does this mean to me, and which tools work for me. And so and that's another danger with social media, is we're getting some great messages, some really good information, but it's also bitty, and people don't know how to fit it all together in the context of who they are and what their life is,
and then get stressed about it and anxious.
Yeah,
and feel
exactly.
like,
Because suddenly they feel like they're doing something wrong because they're not doing it the way you're meant to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And I used to have that with meditation. I used to get so frustrated. I'm not very good at sitting still at all. I can't even do a yoga class. That's just, I need to be spinning or something. But yeah, just there's other ways of doing things, but sometimes it's sort of laid out, even self-care in itself. People say, why have you got a problem with this word? I don't have a problem with the word. It's been thrown about so much. And it's the associations, but again, it depends on what you're viewing, and we're viewing so much different stuff on social media. I think everybody's got their own take on everything, and I think we assign our own meanings to everything anyway, don't we? Even words, something you might view as positive, I might view as negative, or something like that. But I think everything's open to interpretation, isn't it? And again, it comes back to that: have fun with it. Be playful, be curious, assign your own meaning. What does it mean for you? Not why. What does it mean for you?
Absolutely. And I think it's looking at things in context, and that's where something like Russ Harris and acceptance and commitment therapy is fantastic to help understand how everything works. As Russ Harris describes it, it's a process. So it's not a technique, it's a process. And there are so many different techniques within that you can try. And you've got his book. He doesn't have that sort of do this, and if you don't, you've failed kind of message. I mean, I know people don't actually say that. He's like, give this a go, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. Try this. But he really puts everything within context, which I love.
Sorry, you were saying about the happiness, failure. So people saying about failing.
Was I can't remember.
Sorry.
No, sorry, it's not your fault. I mean, to be honest, if you ask me anything 2 minutes after I've said it, I'll have forgotten, because that's the way my brain works.
I think that's all of us. It's just like, we're just on a high alert. There's always stuff going on. And then, squirrel. Oh my goodness. Look, I'm just looking at the time anyway. Like, thank you so much for coming on the show and having this chat. It's been absolutely awesome. So just tell me, it's on my list of things to do, to look up mirror thinking, isn't it? The next book, your second book. Yeah. But while I have you here, tell me about the book. What's in it, before I go and purchase it straight after this call?
Thank you. So mirror thinking, how role models make us human. It's bringing the neuroscience to people in a way that, my mum said, I'm not going to understand it. And she read it. She said, I could understand it. It made sense. I was like, well, good, because that's what it's meant to do. But it's basically taking us through the journey from birth to where we are now, but in understanding the impact that other people have had on forming who we are, and just looking at that. And then how the mirror system in the brain works, which is around all sorts of things, observational learning. So how we learn by watching and interacting, empathy, imagination, daydreaming, storytelling, how all those things work. And then at the end, it's how good role models impact us, how bad role models impact us, and how we can use role models to positively change the world.
I love it. It's right up my street. Brilliant. And the role model thing as well, and that really links back nicely to what you're doing at the moment with the mentor. You've got mentee, mentor, and another mentor, because a mentor's a mentee,
Yeah.
isn't it?
So I mean, it's great because
situation.
yeah, that's a great. I like that. It's a great analogy. And Future First, the CEO, the first call I had with her, she said, "I've just finished reading Mirror Thinking." I was like, "Oh, great, thank you." And she's like, "Can we put it on our website?" And I was like, "Yeah, totally." And so what I want to do is that's the how, the what. That's the what. And I want to look at the how. So what do we actually do with this? And so we're going to use it with Future First to sharpen some of their processes. So say, well, what's all the research telling us? Not just neuroscience, but social psychology, anthropological research. What's it telling us? How does mentoring work most effectively? And how can we put that into the relationships and train the mentors and the mentees to enable that relationship to be the best vehicle for people to fulfill their potential?
I love it. Yeah, important. And growing on that, just because it shouldn't just be a given, like, you teach what you know to that, but there's
actually I mean the problem is actually in some places where mentoring's been put in place as a really positive strategy in terms of intent, it actually creates problems because it's not done properly. The relationship's not built effectively, the mentors are not supported, and it's not understood. In some areas, for example, crime rates go up once these mentoring schemes are put in place because they're not properly. It's in the book, it's a long story, but basically there's a right way and a wrong way of doing it. And whilst it seems like a natural process, it is, but we have to remove some of the obstacles that are in the modern world to make it work.
And I think, the foundations are just so important in any relationship, aren't they? Whether it's, mentor-mentee, a personal relationship, a work relationship. If the foundation, or if the foundations for anything aren't correct, then the whole thing's, going to fall apart. It's not built.
Absolutely.
Solidly. And you can't build on top of it either. You can't get past a certain point. Yeah.
And I love that because there's an image in the videos that I've done for the digital course. There's actually one image where I have someone building the foundations to a house and say exactly what you've just said.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think I've got quite a visual mind, which I'm sure you do as well, in terms of, and that's how you come up with these things. So that's good. Great. Oh,
I know, I'm loving the Russian dolls. That one's going to get used. Yeah. And I will attribute it to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. So we've got Defining You book, and we've got Mirror Thinking, which I will be purchasing. And you've also got your podcast as well, dot to dot.
Yeah, dot to dot podcast. The Mirror Defining You second edition coming out in May. I've rewritten 22,000 words of it, so I'll send you an updated version of that. And I actually talk about how to deal with social media in it. And how to take your own personal approach to using social media most effectively, and what that looks like. That's one of the things in the second edition. So
amazing, and I think really, really important update as well.
And it's not about not using social media, but it's about using it in the way that works best for you. And to do that, you kind of have to put a little bit of effort into just reflecting and working out what that means.
Awesome. So that's in May.
That's how, I think they said 27th of May, but my first publisher tends to change their mind quite a lot.
All people.
Sorry?
That's just people.
Well, I don't know. Bloomsbury, my second publisher, have been absolutely amazing. Not to say, Holly, you're brilliant on first. Yeah.
We're not recording this, are we? Oh, brilliant. Great. And then if people want to find you and just go and check out, like, plug away your social media handles and website and whatever, please.
So they're all just me. So Twitter's Fiona Murden, Instagram Fiona_Murden, LinkedIn Fiona Murden, and my website is, I think it is. And then Facebook, and my website is www.fionamurden.com. So it's all very simple. It's just my name.
Streamlined. I like it. Consistency. Another great
It's quite useful having a name that not many people have, because it means I can kind of grab those handles.
Love it. Amazing. Thank you.
So nice to
so
talk to you. Thank you so much.
So great to meet you finally.
You too.
Take care, Fiona.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you got some good takeaways from today. And if so, then please do leave a review. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and you can find further insights and tools over at camillacollins.com.